they did mass raids. They did mass raids on corporations. They did mass raids on farms, and they started getting people deported. And so some of these big agriculture giants called up Trump, and they said, hey, look, we have no means of production now because half of our workers just got deported. And so Trump says, well, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I got to get them back to work.
We're rolling, dude. Thanks for coming back, Owen.
Fire up the odds. This is an upgrade from the last time because now we're actually moving. We were talking about the type of Austin scenery that we may or may not see in the next 60 minutes that I'm looking forward to. Some good, some bad.
What are you looking forward to seeing, Owen?
Well, I don't mind, good-looking people. I like good-looking people. I like some of the women that come out in the summer in the sundresses. So I like that aspect. But then, you're likely to see a couple crackheads maybe defecating and maybe a bare ass, maybe gyrating.
What are the odds?
Pretty high, I'd say.
Of
pretty
what?
high.
I think like
seeing all of it. I'd say we see it all.
You think we see it all? I don't know.
I do. I think we see all of it. But you're more familiar with this part of town than I am. We're kind of on the outskirts of really the downtown area.
It's funny because the inviting homelessness is a very left-wing idea, but these idea the
look, is that a fire over there? We might have a fire going.
Wow.
How about that? See?
Look at that.
Beautiful.
Like inviting
another bridge fire.
Inviting homelessness is a left-wing idea, but it totally fucks us as drivers. It fucks working people so much.
Why?
Okay, imagine trying to sell a ride to somebody. Now imagine trying to sell a ride to somebody after they've been accosted by 7 homeless guys begging for change.
Yeah. Well, it's but it's like that for anybody. Even if you're just walking downtown, even if you're just walking to your car.
Yeah.
I can't, honestly, I used to come downtown a lot. Maybe it's because I'm older now. I avoid downtown. I can't really deal with it.
Repeat what you just said. You used to.
Yeah.
You used to. You love taking pedicabs. I know this for a fact.
Well, I still find you if I can. Like, I'll go to concerts. That's really the only thing that brings me downtown now.
It's concerts?
Is concerts. Because the ball games, unless you're going to a UT game, like hockey, baseball, that's up north.
Yeah.
So, no, I think, what's crazy actually is how much the skyline has changed in Austin since I moved here. In 10 years, the whole city is it's a different world now.
It's a much different world. It's morphing into a giant megacity.
See, that's the good scenery right there. Very well done.
It's well done, but it is funny. Like we're gonna drive through downtown Austin, and you're gonna see decaying infrastructure firsthand in the flesh.
Well, this is actually a good segue into what we're going to be talking about because I think that the big thrust of my political commentary is we don't have to live like this, right? We don't have to live in a country that has massive debt. We don't have to live in a country where the average American is in debt. We don't have to live in a country where you have to take on a credit card debt just to get over the top and stay afloat. We don't have to live like that. We don't have to live in this country where we're going to see 20 homeless crack addicts on a short drive. We don't have to live in a country where we're going to see decaying, rotting infrastructure no matter which direction you turn your head. I mean, I actually feel bad. Here's a nice woman over here. She looks like she hasn't had a good meal in probably 10 years. She's probably high on drugs. It actually breaks my heart. We don't have to live in a country like this. If we stop with all the foreign aid, if we get rid of all the taxes, if we stop all the foreign entanglements, we can start having nice areas again that you don't have to be afraid or try to avoid downtown.
But it's very difficult to argue this, but there's also a little bit of a catch-22 that I think a lot of people are missing. And it's that a big reason that we don't have massive hyperinflation, and a big reason why the dollar has maintained its purchasing power. I don't like it, but this is just what it is. This is what it is, right? And a big reason that we still have dominance is because we are the global superpower. Us being a global superpower allows us to run trade deficits, which causes us to buy cheap goods, to buy cheap goods from foreign countries at low prices. It causes these other countries to buy American stocks and hold U.S. dollars, which is propping up your dad or your grandfather's retirement. This is metaphorically, right? And so if we just all of a sudden just say, hey, guess what? We're going to radically overhaul everything right now and get out of every foreign country, cut off all foreign aid, and do all of these things at once, you're going to see like a 30%, 40% correction in stocks and equities. Boomers are the largest voting base in the country.
I don't necessarily buy that.
You don't think so?
No, I don't.
I
I don't think as far as our military involvement, I don't think bringing that home would make that difference. Now, we are starting to run into it with the trade deficit and some of the trade deals where we've basically hollowed out our manufacturing capabilities.
Yes.
And so that, I think there is definitely an issue there, and I kind of see what Trump is trying to do. Generally speaking, though, absolutely. To deconstruct the whole corrupt system that really both of us have grown up in. I think we're the same age. I'm 36.
I'm 39. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're virtually the same age. To deconstruct all the corruption that we've had to live with and experience would take multiple administrations, maybe decades. So you can either be an accelerationist and say, okay, collapse it and then rebuild it, or you can say, okay, we have to take 8 years, maybe 16 years to slowly kind of decide what we need to do first, what we need to do last, how we can negotiate fair trade, how we can bring back manufacturing, what we need to do about immigration, what we need to do about mass deportations. But I really do think it's a simple solve of the hundreds of billions. Actually, the number for my life, when I try to look into stats like this, I just base it off 1989 because that's when I was born. We have given out, depending on different estimates, conservatively though, $2 trillion in foreign aid since I've been born. $2 trillion. You're telling me that $2 trillion not invested in foreign countries, that most of it just gets laundered, stolen, doesn't really do anything. Then they send the foreigners here. So we fund these countries so that they don't have collapsing infrastructure.
Well, Owen, let me say one thing. The majority of our GDP growth came from illegal immigration the past 4 years.
How do you figure that?
No, these are just Federal Reserve statistics. Like, it's just there.
But what does that mean?
Well, GDP is a magic number that shows how the economy is growing, and the majority of this growth.
But how does illegal immigration do that?
Because a lot of these illegal immigrants are driving for DoorDash, driving for Uber, taking construction jobs.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
So they're taking all these jobs that people people don't want, but they don't want to take the jobs at the wages that illegal immigrants are paying, and it artificially boosts employment, artificially boosts the job numbers, artificially boosts the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy being artificially boosted encourages other countries to continue owning what they own in U.S. equities. And if China hypothetically says we're going to take like 5% of our holdings in U.S. dollars and move it to gold, Bitcoin, European stocks, or real estate or something else, well then like grandma's retirement can get adversely affected. And I want to say one thing real quick. I don't think it's permanent. I think it's a temporary thing, but politicians do have to get elected every 2 years. And if you're a congressman, if you're a senator, just living in reality, you do not want to vote. You're not going to want to you got to still be a little careful depending on where you live about how you go about voting for and advocating for things like that, because you need to still get reelected. A lot of your donor base comes from these large mega corporations and CEOs and whatnot. And if shareholder value goes down, you're getting less campaign funds. You're getting less votes. You're seeing a glimpse of this with this No Kings bullshit, right? And it's a bunch of old people protesting. They're probably getting bussed in and whatnot. But aside from that, these old people are also a little bit scared of losing a large portion of their net worth that has been propped up by this fiat Ponzi scheme.
I do think there is an issue when it comes to illegal alien workers, and I think that we ran into that in the agriculture industry, and you saw Trump kind of take the knee on that.
He has to take the knee on that, because if he doesn't, what I'm saying could potentially happen, and it becomes a disaster for midterms, and it becomes a disaster for people that work in
I don't think it's as much of a political thing as it is a necessity thing. And if you use the agriculture industry as an example, I think it is a good example. So the Trump administration's policy coming in was the mass deportations. I didn't see that character. It was the mass deportations and illegal aliens taking jobs from Americans. There's no doubt there's an issue with Americans that don't want to work. It's a foreign thing to me. I've always wanted to work. I've been working since I was like 14. I wanted to work. I wanted to have money coming in. So it's kind of a foreign concept to me. But you do see people that just don't want to work.
Oh, I get it.
And I don't know if they live on welfare. Again, it's totally foreign to me.
No,
we do have that issue.
I get it completely.
But you come back to the agriculture industry. So they did mass raids. They did mass raids on corporations. They did mass raids on farms. And they started getting people deported. And so some of these big agriculture giants called up Trump and they said, hey, look, we have no means of production now because half of our workers just got deported. And so Trump says, well, what do you want me to do? And he's like, I got to get them back to work. So that's a difficult thing. Now, I think that Americans would work those jobs. I think we have a cultural problem when it comes to work and when it comes to pride in your work. I think that's a cultural problem we have, probably mostly on the left, welfare baby types. But there's no doubt in a lot of the factories that do still exist here, in a lot of these big corporations that hire the illegal alien workers, and they get fooled, they have fake paperwork and everything else. You deport 50 people in a factory of 150 workers in one day, I mean, your production is going to take a hit. And so I think that was a very real issue that Trump had to deal with.
Depending on the town, and this is just a question I don't know for sure, but are there enough young able-bodied people in those towns to fill
Yeah.
You think so? Okay.
I do.
That's just a question I was wondering
I do.
about.
I mean, I don't know. The numbers, I don't know if anybody could produce the numbers to either argue that positively or negatively. I don't know. Again, it's foreign to me because for me, I always wanted to work. Like if I found a job that I could go get, and it was different when we were growing up, but like if I found a job where I could get $10, $15 an hour, I was taking it.
Yeah,
I was like, that's money in my pocket. I'd work all day in the summer and I'd go party at night.
Yeah,
like,
but how old are you?
I started working when I was probably I was taking babysitting gigs as soon as I could when in my neighborhood when I was like
13, 12?
Yeah, 12, 13 years old. I started reffing youth sports by the time I was 14.
So before college?
Oh, yeah.
So so you're doing this before college, and you were doing this, I don't think you have any like crazy student debt, but hypothetically if you did, you're doing this before being hundreds of thousands of dollars in student debt.
Yeah, I mean, that's another issue, the student debt racket. I paid off all my student debt. I went
to a state school, so I never had to deal with that.
What do you mean?
I went to SUNY Binghamton in upstate New York. Tuition was like $10,000 a year.
Okay.
So never had to, we were able to just pay. Luckily, families able to just pay for that, so never had any student loans.
Yeah, I went to Mizzou for 2 years, and then they kicked me out. And then I finished at University of Missouri St. Louis. Yeah, it was a disciplinary issue.
Oh, okay.
You can imagine. But no, I mean, that was really expensive.
No.
That was really expensive. My college was really expensive. I came out with a pretty significant amount of debt. So, but you paid it off. And I think so many 18-year-olds, probably myself included, are like I understood I can go work $10 an hour, $15 an hour, and then I can put some money in a bank account, and then I can go out and buy, some fun things with my friends.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I can take a girl out on a date, but it's like signing on to this giant student loan debt when you're 18 years old, when you've never really fully comprehended what $10,000 is or $50,000 is. It's really just financial illiteracy and irresponsibility, I think.
Which is also,
so they take advantage
being
of
encouraged in the schools, and
Exactly.
a lot of people that teach
Yeah.
kids happen to have very left-wing, very socialist type of beliefs. And so, these beliefs are manifested in a classroom setting, not really applicable to the real world as it stands right now. And with all of that being said, nobody's telling these kids to save money in hard assets, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's telling these
Or
kids.
just,
Nobody's telling
maybe just think about it. Maybe think about it. Maybe spend a semester or two at a community college that's not going to cost you, tens of thousands of dollars, and just see.
Yeah. Or
maybe
live
it's
at
not
home
for you.
Live at home with mom and dad for as long as you can.
Now, see, I was not into that. As soon as I was 18, I was like, I got to get out.
So I lived with mom and dad until I was 27 years old, living in New York.
New York is a little more
New York's
expensive
a little
than
bit more
St. Louis,
New
Missouri,
York's a
where
lot
I
more
grew up.
expensive. But and I had, there were some maturity issues, and it took me a while to figure things out. Thankfully, I did. But what I'm saying though is that, if you're an 18-year-old kid and you're living with mom and dad after high school, and you're working like a construction job, or you're working as a waiter, or you're driving a pedicab, or you're doing God knows what, you're doing something along those lines, you could take that money and just buy as much Bitcoin as possible for 4 years, and all of a sudden, 5-10 years later,
I'm actually surprised how long it took you to bring up Bitcoin.
What?
That had to be like pretty the longest. Maybe usually Bitcoin is coming out of your mouth like within 5 minutes.
Well, it fixes a lot of the problems that we have.
Well, we don't know. We don't
It's
know.
kind of obvious, but
I don't know. Well, I think it's uncertain.
what do you mean uncertain? It's been pretty like the sound monetary asset with the 21 million fixed supply cap that gets harder to produce every 4 years and easy to verify
but you
that
have
can't be
to,
censored it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, but
in
they're
this
getting to the
environment.
point. They're getting to the point where it's becoming centralized now. There's a lot of policy trying to centralize it.
Well, with the
and track and trace
reserve
it.
and then
Yeah.
the genius. Yeah, but
Yeah,
but those
I
are
think-
stable coins, and that's not.
But I think the issue here's the issue I see with Bitcoin. It's a digital asset, and unless everybody buys in, then it's never going to get to where it's at. And I think it's doing itself a disservice when people are like tracking, like it's worth 100,000 or 80,000 or whatever it is. Like, really, you've just turned it into a stock. You've turned it into just another version of the stock market instead of saying, no, the goal is it's not about a monetary value. It's about when do we decide as a civilization that we're getting out of fiat currency and we're gonna go into our own cryptocurrency. Like, that's the real issue.
Owen,
but how many people look at it like that?
I
Most
think-
people
but
look at the
that's-
dollar amount and say, oh, I'm buying, I'm selling.
Yeah, but that's also due to lack of financial literacy. And I think that when you look at the fact that our dollar is backed by nothing, and you look at the fact that the dollar is meant to systematically decline by, 3% if you believe the experts, and 10% if you live in real life.
But
and
you're
that happens.
you're still basing this off of the fact that Bitcoin is now worth over $100,000.
Yeah, but I was saying this when it was like 12 grand.
I know, but what I'm saying is, it could easily go back to 10.
Yeah, then you buy more of it because it's a better form of money.
Sure, but see what I'm saying? Now you're just dealing with the stock market. That's basically what you're saying. You're
Yeah,
just
but it's
you're just
still
riding
money.
the waves.
It's still money. Like if I
But
if
it's
I
still
want-
it's still based in the dollar. You're still tethered to the dollar, which
Well,
is the whole purpose is to get untethered from it.
Sure, but the more you see how it's going to move in relation to the dollar, eventually you're going to see, it's going to be gradual and that's going to be sudden. Where eventually you're going to say, "Wow, the dollar's going to be worth the same as a Venezuelan
Can you buy?
gold."
I think I've heard of it. Can you buy? Buy a house with Bitcoin? How many people would allow you to do that?
I think if you do it owner finance, why not? People have bought houses with Bitcoin for.
So it'd have to be like a
absolutely.
private transaction. Probably like you wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to deal with a bank in Bitcoin.
No, but they're making
Nobody
certain.
can afford
they
a
are
house
making
anyway.
certain rules with like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, where you could like actually use the Bitcoin as like assets that you have to get like the credit for the house. You could do that. There are services where you can borrow against your Bitcoin, which I don't recommend. Not financial advice. But either way, it's still been proven to be a better savings technology. So if you just happen to save your money in Bitcoin over 5 or 10 years, you're in a much better position to buy a house than if you're just working 3 jobs and
Yes.
the money you have goes
But it's
nowhere.
like-
And then when that happens,
But
and
it's
the
like
money you have
getting a
goes
stock
nowhere,
gain.
and you're like, no, but it's not a stock because it's money. Like
Stock is money.
no, it's not. A stock is
No. But hold on. If you buy Bitcoin at 10 grand, and then you sell one Bitcoin at 110 grand, what just happened?
Well, you did make a profit in dollar amount, but you could also
Exactly.
No,
So
I know,
it's still
but,
the dollar.
But I can't like give you Apple stock in exchange for a good or a service, right? I can't do that. But I could theoretically like say, hey, Owen, I want to buy, like, let's say I want to go to the InfoWars store, and I want to buy a bunch of Super Male Vitality, or I want to buy some TurboForce to really maximize the energy that I have at the at
You got high Judaism energy.
High energy, yeah, that's true, yes. and they say we run the banks, and I'm telling you to get off the banks. All right.
You don't run the banks?
Surprise, right?
They don't give you free cash?
I don't want their cookbooks.
Man, that's kind of anti-Semitic.
I don't want the cookbooks, Owen.
What if you went to that would actually be kind of a funny stunt if you like showed up in the bank and you had like full on like
The
Jewish
yarmulke, yeah.
garb. Yeah, like can I get a 0 interest loan?
You know what? Actually, that would be really funny because it would show that whole.
That's a skip. That's one for you.
I should do it because that whole concept is total bullshit anyway. And it'll just show that it's total BS.
Yeah, that's true. Or you could like go in front of city council and be like, I went to the bank and they actually made me take out a loan with interest. And I thought that the Jews ran everything, and I got interest, and it's anti-Semitic.
Yeah, I'm really offended and hurt by this. Where's my 0 interest loan?
You haven't really gone with that angle yet. You're still on kind of the trans liberal angle, which is great. You've mastered it.
I'm so good at it.
Yeah, you've
I
totally
think I'm
mastered
actually
it.
the best in the world at this.
You might be. You and Alex Stein are definitely the top tier for sure.
We are top tier, but here I am riding a tricycle while Alex has a big network television show.
That's true. That's true.
Which is fine.
But he did originate the city council troll. He
Yes.
did originate that.
He also told me to do it too and follow in his footsteps.
And you're both named Alex. What are the odds of that?
I know. And
His
Rosen
name-
and Alex Jones. It's just there's something about
his name is more Jewish than yours, though.
I know, but he's not even a real Jew. He's not.
I don't
even,
think he's Jewish.
No,
I don't know.
it's like his dad is Jewish, and so it's not.
It doesn't count that way. The rules are all strange.
Well,
I don't know.
It's maternal. The mom's got to be Jewish. So with me and Vanessa, like our kid's not going to be Jewish because Vanessa's not Jewish.
That's so weird. Why is that? Who made these rules?
God probably, but I don't know. I'm not like, look.
Is this one of these arbitrary like Old Testament things?
I honestly,
like 2 cubits by 3 cubits and 144,000 Jews and stuff?
I'm not a religious scholar, so I do not know.
That's what I learned. The Old Testament is such a strange book because I read the whole thing when I was in prison. I read the whole Bible.
Wait, how was prison?
It sucked. Do not recommend. Not highly recommended. Avoid at all costs.
What were the showers like?
Well, actually, so the showers where I was at, it wasn't too bad. You did get your own private shower. And actually, the water pressure and the heat is probably better than any shower you'll ever have. It was like an elephant shower. It was actually funny how that deal worked out. But they're all like rusted and rotted. It's falling apart. It's all gross. But the water pressure and the temperature, I gotta say, when I was in general. When I was in solitary, you have this little button, and you push it, and you get like 30 seconds of cold water like sprinkled on you. So you really can't even shower when you're in solitary.
But you don't really need to. You're not looking around anybody.
Well, yeah.
But it's still for yourself, right?
It's just like, it just sucks. It's like, oh, your shower. It's just like you don't even get a shower. So yeah, I forget where we're going.
The Old Testament. We're talking about the Old Testament.
Oh yeah, so I'm reading it, and I realized, because it's been a while since I've just sat down and just read through the whole thing, and I realized that half the Old Testament is just like weird arbitrary rules. You're just reading chapter after chapter of arbitrary rules, chapter after chapter of just genealogy, like literally genealogy, just chapter after chapter.
Sure.
And then you get to the good stuff when they're like warring and whoring and conquering and being conquered and fighting.
Well, like in Prophet, I started reading.
Like
Prophets,
that's the good stuff.
I haven't really started reading the book. I read Joshua. Well, I've listened to Joshua, and I've started listening to Judges, like when I have to drive.
Like audio Bible.
Yeah.
It's a good way to do it.
Trying to go to synagogue because I have to drive into Austin or
Where would you go to synagogue? Do you have a synagogue?
Yeah.
Do you go on Saturdays?
I try when I can.
Does the rabbi scold you because you weren't there last week?
What's happening last week?
No, I just mean you weren't there. Were you there?
I was there. I actually went, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it's funny though because the rabbi's like an Alex Jones fan.
Yeah, I think from my experience, I would say a large portion of, I don't know how you want to characterize it. We'll just say InfoWars audience, but maybe conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, you Jews are overrepresented in every group, including conspiracy
theorists.
We're
over. Yeah.
Including anti-establishment conspiracy theorists.
We're the controlled opposition. You know what I mean?
I guess.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Dude, there's a lot of craziness though, but that's really been kind of dominating the landscape on X.
Yeah. I think that the problem is Israel in my eyes. I don't think Israel is doing the Jewish people any favors. I don't think Netanyahu is doing Israelis any favors either. And from my perspective, it looks like Netanyahu is basically willing to sacrifice anything for whatever his greater goal is. If that's, conquering more land, expanding the Jewish state. Whatever his bigger goals are, clearly I think that he's shown he's willing to sacrifice anything to get there.
I'm not a Netanyahu fan. But
yeah, neither are a lot of Israelis.
Yeah, a lot of Israelis are not Netanyahu fans. Me being Jewish, being a little more pro-Israel.
So what do you do about that? Because that's the issue. Is everybody tends to just, but it's not even the anti-Semites that do this. It's people like Levin and Shapiro that claim they speak for all Jews, or even Netanyahu. Like they claim, I represent every single Jewish person on the whole planet.
Well, I don't know. Do you think like Dylan Mulvaney speaks for all transgenders or something like that? Like it's just like it's all like you highlight
nobody pitches it like that.
No, but I mean I think that's what the problem is that people think that like you have like these rabid neocons that'll speak for everybody, and I don't sign on to that, right? Like I think Israel,
that's
like hold on,
Western propaganda.
No, but here's what I'm saying, right? My view is right. My view. I listened to your the thing with Pastor Locke right before we came, and I'm like very much like pro-Israel, support Israel's right to exist. It's within God's covenant to support the Jewish state of Israel. Now you can still do that while being openly critical of the Israeli government, especially if you think that what the Israeli government is doing is antithetical to the preservation of a Jewish state. And I think that's kind of where I come in, where I'm like, look, man, like it's very obvious in the Old Testament that this is This is a Jew. It's a Jewish country. Even the Arabs, they call them, the Yehudi means people of Judea, right? So I think like that's pretty much like.
But it's all different now because that's like actually dealing with the 12 tribes and the tribe of Judea versus like the tribe of Levite and everything else.
Okay, but here's the other. But there's a couple buts, right? And it's that like. If you look at what you said about the Palestinians, that most of the Palestinians probably have more Semitic descent.
Israelis.
Yeah. But there's also the diaspora too, right? And when Rome conquered took the temple and conquered Israel and drove Israel out of the land in like the year 70 AD, a lot of Jews wind up fleeing to all over the world, and many of those Jews wind up
which
fleeing
seems to be a pattern. It seems to be a pattern. They're doing it again now.
But they're
just to
fleeing
get
Israel.
out of Israel.
No,
people are leaving Israel. That's totally.
It's actually a net. No, I don't. I disagree. Disagree.
No.
Agree.
Dude,
Disagree.
no. Well, okay, we can agree to disagree, but I'm telling you, 500,000 have fled.
I think that
the bombs are dropping in Israel. You think people are going in?
Well, not right now, theoretically. Not right now, but now.
Netanyahu was closing bridges and closing airports so people couldn't leave because they were leaving in such mass.
Where did you find that?
When I just do my normal daily internet
research?
research.
I know, but I mean, like, what? Who was the source? Who told you that?
Probably like Jewish Insider or Israeli Times or something.
Okay.
That's where I get most of my Israel news.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
And there's a lot of propaganda that comes out of there too.
There's a lot of bullshit.
Yeah. For sure.
So I just want to know, like, where are you finding that info?
I find Jerusalem Post, Israel Times, and what was the other one I mentioned?
Haaretz.
I forget. I find those to be pretty reliable. But like the Israeli 12, Israeli 13, they seem to put out a lot of false information, so I try to avoid whatever they put out.
Yeah, and there is also a lot of just full-blown anti-Jewish garbage on X.
Yeah.
And
there's pro-Israel garbage on X, so you got to find a way.
No, but I see a lot more anti-Israel garbage on X. I see a lot more of it. Come on,
here's my theory, actually. I think that because you only get one experience, and that's your own, right?
Yeah.
You only get to experience the world through your eyes. So what I see happening is all of these, and because I deal with the reality. Whenever I see all of these accounts on X that are all anonymous, okay, and you've probably seen some of them too, they're all anonymous, and they have some like weird name like Lioness Jew or like Persian Jew or like all this weird stuff, and they have the Israeli flag in there. And they're constantly commenting on American politics, and they're constantly telling you how Israel's the best and all this stuff. I actually think if there's any anti-Israel propaganda, I actually think that's it. I actually think somebody is putting up these pro-Israel accounts with the Israeli flag just to tick Americans off, just to anger Americans into hating Israel and thinking, oh, this is how everybody feels over here. That's what I think.
Me and Alex Rosen made a joke about how Randy Fine is probably the one who's being paid off by Qatar.
That guy, but that's what
and
I'm
not
saying.
Like a Nadia and Carol.
Like he's
Randy.
the worst representation you could get if you're a Jew. He's
yeah.
horrible.
Do you see me arguing with Rabbi Shmuley? Like, yeah, I'm
that's
not
what I'm saying,
disagreeing with you on
but
that.
But you see what I'm saying? I feel like it's a reverse psychology thing. Everybody thinks it's Nick Fuentes, it's Candace Owens, it's Tucker Carlson. No, I think they're
I'm
they're
chewing
organic.
An couch right now. I'm a Jew for Tucker.
Actually, they have a biological representation in the pouch to target the Jewish DNA. So you might want to be careful about that.
All right,
that's like in James Bond. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm saying they're blaming the organic American figures, and they're missing what I think is really going on. Like Shmuley, like that guy's a psyop. Randy Fine, that guy's a psyop.
But Owen, there's also the random guy with the frog picture that has Groiper in their bio, which is like the new form of pronouns that are also doing similar stuff and just saying uncontrollably like insane schizo, mentally ill sewing circle type of shit as well. So there is what I'm trying to say is that a lot of what you see on X isn't real. And
I agree.
And it's we talked about this earlier, like the social media landscape is actually systematically designed to create mental illness. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if the pharma companies
that's been proven now too.
Yeah, if the pharma companies that profit handsomely off of mental illness and off transing your kids and mandates and all this other stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they have a hand in like all of the crazy stuff that's going on X. That's potentially going on on X and whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good point. I never thought of that. But let's bring it back to the actual real world politics. I think Israel is losing support of Americans. I think they're losing it fast. I think they have 10 years, maybe 20 years max before politically Americans want nothing to do with Israel anymore. And I think that's real. I think that's organic. I think it's totally fair, by the way. I don't think there's anything anti-Semitic about it. I think it's totally fair. I don't really think you can make. I've never seen anybody convince me an argument that our relationship with Israel has been a net benefit for America. I've never been convinced by anybody that can argue that. So I think that whether or not the social media stuff is real or where psyops are happening, I think that what is real is that Americans they're done with the Middle East. They're done with the greatest ally of Israel, and I think it's going to be reflected politically very soon. Maybe even, I mean, you're already seeing it in New York City, I think, with Mamdani.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute. What do you think is going to happen to America in 20 years?
Well, I was saying this earlier. So bigger picture, I think the boomers, the older generation folks, they're on their way out. This is the oldest Congress we've ever had, by the way. More people over 70
I made a video
or 60.
a couple years ago. I went to the nursing home to try to convince people to run for higher office.
Yeah. Well, they're already there. They're already in Congress.
Yeah.
So you've had two of the oldest presidents of all time with Trump and Biden. You have the oldest Congress of all time. A new generation of politicians, a new generation of political commentators is starting to come of age, and the left wing is going to be outright socialists. The right wing is going to be outright nationalists, and this is where the real debate is going. I know it's ironic, right? National socialists.
Yeah, I was about to say something. I was about to say.
So maybe I don't know what you want to take out of that, but that's where everything is heading, and so. The way I see it, so that's just kind of at the base level. That's like at the voter electorate level. And then at the larger level, the boomers that have mostly been controlled by the big pharma industry, the military-industrial complex, they're about to be kind of expired. And who knows the final fate of the military-industrial complex and the pharmaceutical-industrial complex. But the political control is about to be handed over from the boomers, military-industrial complex, pharmaceutical-industrial complex. It's about to be handed over to the tech bros. And so the tech bros are about to take over. AI, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Palantir, Alex Karp, I mean, Zuckerberg, you know all the names. They're about to take over the American political system. And so I think what we'll have is we'll go from, it's always going to be corrupt. Whether it be less or more corrupt, I don't know. But you'll go from us bombing 24/7 all over the world, just bombing everything, always wars, always involved in foreign entanglements, to full AI grid, surveillance, governance, which is going to suck too.
Well, where's do you think the AI mass surveillance is going to take place everywhere or just in the big cities?
Well, it'll be everywhere. It'll always be worse in the big cities.
Because I'm out in like Johnson City, like I'm out in the country, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not on like a grid like that, then you can avoid it. But it'll be in your house. Do you have a TV?
Yeah, but there's always going to be ways around this, and that's what I think.
Sure, you can get old tech.
No, or you can get like a Web 5 television, or you can, when you go on the internet, you can start using Tails, or you can get a Linux operating system, or you could, like I said earlier, you could run a Bitcoin node and run your
But
own
it'll still be there. So you have to find ways around it. But yeah, it'll still be there.
But there's always going to be new technology, and there are a lot of people in the tech world that are very freedom focused too, and there is going to be an onslaught of new freedom tech that will counterbalance that. And a lot of people are going to get stuck in this digital prison, but only because they're unaware of the alternatives.
Yeah, but I just think larger picture, that's where it's all going. It's all going, the tech bros are about to take over, and we'll have a real culture shift. So that's where I see it in 20 years. Really, I don't know.
But like with America, we're $37 trillion in debt, right? Running massive trade deficits because of our U.S. military hegemony.
Okay.
Okay, so here's where I'm headed, right? In 20 years, right, if we keep spending and doing things at the rate we're doing, which there's no stopping this train, what happens to the power of your dollar? What happens? We're already getting manifestations of civil unrest via the protests with the class war with Luigi Mangione. You're getting manifestations of civil unrest with the astroturfing of insane talking points on X. 20 years from now, this stuff that's only in its infancy could potentially get a lot worse. And there's a book by Ray Dalio, like The Changing World Order, and it talks about like the 6 stages of like empire of building an empire through the inception to its decline. And right now we are in the collapsing stage, right? Before, like from 2008 to now, we're in the collapse. And from the 80s to from Reagan getting elected to 2008, we're in the decadent stage where we're overly spending on things that we don't need and what have you, right? And so by the time we hit that 20-year period, we could be in the civil war stage with how things are going, with our debt being unsustainable, with student loans being out of control, with the younger people, working class professionals, $300,000 in debt, jobs automated by AI, useless degrees, people who don't want to work because of the fact that your dollar isn't shit, all these other things, right? You could wind up getting the recipe for massive amounts of civil unrest. I could see that also happening 10, 20 years down the line. If that happens, right at the same time that we're not supporting Israel, there is something to be said about that pastor being kind of right.
No.
I mean,
No.
What do you mean?
You can't connect those two things.
Why not?
That is such a leap.
You think it's a
so
leap?
You're saying, hold on a second. But think about what you're saying. You're saying that America has been on a decline while we're supporting Israel, but then not supporting Israel is going to lead to the collapse. It just logically doesn't make sense.
Well, we've been on a decline for multiple reasons aside from supporting Israel.
I don't think I'm not
been on
somebody.
a decline since
Israel is one of many issues we have. I don't think Israel has anything to do with our collapse. I think it's just another facet of our collapse.
Yeah, it's a facet. The Middle East is a facet.
I mean, people would argue that I guess Israeli influence over foreign policy has been a complete disaster, maybe the biggest disaster for our foreign policy. So there might be some truth to that. Culturally, people will debate about where all the cultural rot comes from.
But do you think it's like Israeli influence, or do you think that like we're using Israel to just fulfill the goals of like the promise for a new American century? Like you know how like Iran said like America's a great Satan and we're like the little Satan?
That's only because of us supporting Israel. That's all that's about.
Yeah, but it could also be us using countries like Israel to help foster these globalist initiatives.
It's the opposite. Israel uses the United States to do that. That's why these countries hate us.
Strong disagree. I think
How so? What benefit has America gotten from any regime change or involvement in the Middle East?
Oh, zero. But that's not. But
what about Israel? Massive benefits.
Well, but okay, wait, hold on. How has Israel benefited from Iraq, from what happened in Iraq, or how has Israel benefited from Libya?
They got the regime change.
But how is that? Like, if you're a person living in Israel, and now that country, now that country's being governed by radical, fanatical Islamic terrorists, and you're living in Israel, and that's your neighbor. Like, how does that? I just want to know. Like, I'm not. We're
let me address it on that.
I just want to know how that benefits.
So let me address it on that. If you're Israel and you've got all these other countries that you've created enemies within, who would you rather have running it? Somebody that's going to make that country operate well and prosper, or some third world caveman that's going to turn it into a constant civil war state?
Okay. That being said, when there's a bunch of chaos in that country, you attract more terrorists, you attract more suicide bombers, you attract more things.
They ain't going into Israel. So they don't care. Why would Israel care?
How many people from, even from Gaza, from Palestine, they let in like 1,000 people like a day or whatever from that pastor.
Yeah, the workers.
How do you know? How do you know those workers aren't terrorists? Like, how do you know?
Well, they frisk them.
But how do you know?
They probably anally probe them. It's like you going through TSA. They can't. They're not going to get anything in, and they don't want to. They just want to go in and work. They don't have the opportunities in Palestine, so they go in there to work.
You think Israel should exist?
Yeah, I have no problem with Israel existing, but I don't believe Israel, as the landmass that it is and the borders that it has, I don't believe it has. I don't think it's biblical at all. I think it's another globalist asset. I think it's another client state of the military-industrial complex that is used to inflict regime change in the Middle East. So I don't believe it's the Bible. I don't believe it's the biblical Israel.
I think you're half right.
Do you think the current Israel is the Israel of the Bible?
Here's what I think. I think that in the Bible and the Torah, it says that Israel is a Jewish state. As a Jew living in Israel, as a Jew, you have this obligation that there is a spiritual connection to that place. That being said, there are these globalists and people in the military-industrial complex that are just bastardizing the Bible and the Torah, because the people that go to Bilderberg, the people that go to these conferences, they don't have any relationship to God in any capacity. They worship satanic figures and different effigies.
And they use Christians.
Yeah, and they use Christians and everybody of every religion to facilitate this evil, demonic, globalist agenda. So I think that you're not wrong, but it's not like there's elements of truth to both sides, and it's a weird, sticky situation to figure out how to navigate.
Why don't the Orthodox Jews?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Why don't the Orthodox Jews run Israel and not these Eastern European Jews.
I think they should.
I agree. I've said that for years. I do think the Orthodox
agree.
Jews should run
I think they should. And you know what's funny? I think that if more people were like,
and guess what?
I think if more people studied Torah and more people were more focused on God and serving God, you would have a lot less problems, not only in the Middle East but everywhere else, because we would have a much better society. Fully agree with you.
By the way, and the current Israeli government, they discriminate against the Orthodox Jews, and they're trying to bring them into the military now. It's been a big issue.
You know, I have no issue with that. I do know that in Israel there is a segment of Orthodox Jews called like the ultra Orthodox, who are like just
they wear the hats and they have the hair. And the beard.
The Hasidim is different, right? Like they're just an extra level or two above that, right?
Like and really following the strict laws.
Yeah, just to a T, right? Like the Westboro Baptist Church of Jews, if that makes sense.
That seems that sounds extreme.
Yes. But like the Israeli people hate those guys.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. They get discriminated
against. They hate them.
Yeah.
But they
probably don't like to go to Tel Aviv and get, the gay pride.
Well, it's funny, though, because I have a friend who was, like, wearing pants or like, a skirt that went, like, right to here, and she was getting things thrown at her because...
In Israel?
Yeah.
I think it's funny. How conservatives will talk shit on San Francisco, and then when they're trying to convince you how great Israel is, they'll tell you how great Tel Aviv is, and they'll say, it's just like San Francisco. Like, you just talk shit on San Francisco for 30 minutes, and now you're saying
people don't shit on the floor in Tel Aviv.
No, they do take care of their city. You got to give them credit for that.
They do.
But see, so this is. But
the tax rate in Israel, like I have a chiropractor who lives out there, and the tax rate is like fucking, to buy a car, you're paying like 100% tax every time you buy like a vehicle. Like
which is insane.
The Israeli people do pay an absurd amount of taxes on things. And it's also just unrelated. We were talking about bomb shelters and all this other stuff. Israelis have one of the highest indexes of happiness, I think, globally. If you measure the global happiness index, Israelis have a pretty high, are very high on the global happiness index compared to other countries in the world, and we are like at the bottom.
Yeah, that's an interesting culture study. I don't want to get into that, but let me get back to the larger topic. Most Americans don't even realize that they're witnessing the collapse, right? They're in total denial of the collapse. It's happening right in front of their eyes. And if they go to parts of the world like St. Petersburg or Moscow or parts of Japan or parts of China or Saudi Arabia or UAE or Qatar or these other countries, and they realize, wait a second, their infrastructure is all nice. They don't have people shitting on the streets. They don't have people doing drugs. They don't have this massive homeless issue. They don't have crime issues. They have high-trust societies. Things are nice. And then they're like, well, wait a second, why doesn't America have this? And that's what I'm saying is we don't have that because all of our money gets shipped overseas. Even just now, they came out with the Indian diaspora. They just raked in $135 billion that got sent back into India from Indians that work in different countries, and they sent it back. $135 billion. $32 billion of that, and this was the last fiscal year number that I could get, $32 billion came from America. Why aren't we taxing that? Why are we taxing American citizens 40% of their work? Why don't we tax the money that foreign workers send back to their country? Let's tax that at 30%. That's what I want. I mean, look at this road. How many fucking potholes are we going to run over tonight? How many fucking cones and pylons and fucking street construction shit? Look at all this construction. Not a single person working. Not one. And they shut down every single road. Look at this. Shut down. Scaffolding. Nobody's fucking working. What the hell is going on? This is the signs of collapse that everybody's ignoring. These are the signs of a third world country that everybody's ignoring. And there is a simple solution to this. We start reinvesting in America. So it's not, Israel is one country that gets hundreds of billions of dollars.
I don't think we should, just for the record, I don't think we should be giving hundreds of billions of dollars to a foreign country.
Any of them, ever. Ukraine just got $300 billion.
I do think that what you said, too, about the loss of support for Israel, and you've probably gotten some shit from certain people for saying some of this stuff.
Well, it's just typical.
No, it's fine. It's whatever, right? But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And
that's just the truth. I mean, regardless of what I think, that's just anybody can witness that.
My view, especially, when I do these podcasts, I like to just talk about things that are just in reality and not have an emotional, not be emotional about it. Just be like, look, this is what is, just so we talk, just to talk through what's going on, right? You're right. The support for Israel, the support for any foreign involvement is going down the tubes. We are becoming a lot less neocon than we've ever been in our history. Even the neocons today, like, we're calling Ted Cruz a neocon. 20 years ago, Ted Cruz would never have been looked at as a neocon. So the cultural shift has changed. People like James Lindsay are being talked at as neocons.
James Lindsay, that guy. Who is James? That guy's a nothing.
You know what? We're going to talk about that potentially if there's time.
There's not time. There's no time to talk about James Lindsay.
No time.
No, why? What's the point? You want to talk about some pudgy, pale guy who nobody knows what he's ever done with his life except post on social media?
Well, I think that what he's talking about with the woke right and that concept. No, hold on. Hear me out, right?
I'm listening.
Okay, I think he's got a point, and I think that and I agree with him when it comes to some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier with the crazy, full-blown, self-admitted Nazis posting.
Now this is where okay. So let's actually go down to this. Let's first identify. Just separate.
But I think he's putting it in too broad of a stroke, where he's like categorizing Alex in that, or you in that, or Tucker in that, or if that makes sense.
Hold up. What is woke? Just generally speaking, what is woke?
Woke is the whole idea of basing everything purely on identity politics and using hyper emotional reasoning to justify whatever you believe in, and using bullying and anger and lack of reasoning and arguing via emotion to convey a point. I've been noticing that a lot more on the full Nazi side. And I'm saying full Nazi, I'm not lumping any of you guys in that, but I'm just saying, just as an aside, I'm noticing that a lot more on that side than on the other side.
So I'm generally speaking, woke, I think your definition of woke is pretty, I would agree mostly. I would say the signs are name calling, okay? And basing something off of identity. I think that's good. But, what is like a telltale sign? Name calling, when you lose a debate, going to ad hominem attacks. Well, if there's a woke right, it's the people that actually support Israel, in my view. And that's just maybe an unfair generality. Those are the people that call you a Nazi. Those are the people that can't win a debate, so they end up with ad hominem attacks.
So, I don't know. You know what? Yes, but also...
But isn't that true?
But I don't think anybody's calling you Nazi. Is anybody,
oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Are real people? Who called you Nazi?
Oh, I don't know. Well, it's actually funny. I get called a Nazi and an Israeli shill every day. So
but also people,
it's actually hilarious.
It's funny. People called you, and it was more of these like left-wing socialist types.
But
that called you
look at the debates. Look at the debates I've done on X with James Lindsay, and you tell me. You ever
did a debate with you? I didn't know you did a debate with James Lindsay.
You tell me. You look at the exchanges I've had with James Lindsay.
Oh,
one of
okay.
many,
written debate. Okay.
And you tell me who sounds like woke right.
Okay, I'll look through it. I'm happy to look through it. And I saw your episode of Misfit Patriot.
That was good. It was a good debate.
I actually enjoyed it. It was good.
Yeah,
it was well debate. But that's actually a positive for where we're at.
I like debate.
Yeah, where everyone's talking through things. I don't think this is a debate. I think we're just talking through different things to figure out, because we're on the same side. We both love America.
Yeah, that's how I was with Greg Locke earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, this Mamdani guy.
Well, they're going to hand him this election, is what they're going to do. I'm afraid of that for New York City. They're going to hand it to him by continuing to insult him for being a Muslim or insult him as an anti-Semite, whatever. So they're going to hand it to him. They should be building up Eric Adams. Sliwa should drop out. They should all drop out.
Okay. But why Eric Adams?
Who else you got?
Why does it matter? And I'm saying this
because...
Well,
somebody has to win. What do you mean? Who's going to win?
Okay. I'm saying this as somebody I grew up in New York. Right? Grew up in New York City, grew up in Riverdale. Couldn't afford to ever make it or live out on my own because of how expensive it was, the culture, everything, right?
That's why he's popular.
That's exactly why he's popular. If I had stayed in New York, was not a pedicab driver, didn't make good investments, didn't start coming into my own, I'd be one of those people right now embracing Zohran Mamdani as the next mayor of New York. And I'm going to say that right now because it's relevant, because that's how a lot of people are. I also think that a lot of the people that are the biggest proponents of socialism are not working class people. It's white college educated people who are white college educated with liberal beliefs who have useless degrees and are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with useless degrees. These are the biggest proponents of socialism. You're going to get a new cohort of socialists and little communists when their jobs when your tech job gets automated by AI and you no longer have any use in the marketplace, and you're hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for a degree that you thought was going to pay dividends, but it winds up not paying dividends for it. So that's a very real concern that gets mentioned on All In, and a lot of other like conservatives with any type of a brain will mention that. That being said, you ran a guy who put COVID patients in nursing homes.
Oh, Cuomo was a disaster. Yeah, that didn't help. But the Democrats don't care. The Democrats are fine with Mamdani.
You know what? Do you think it would really get that much? Like, New York is pretty bad. Like, how much worse? Like, it's already at the bottom. How much worse does it really get with that guy as mayor?
You would obviously know more about New York's culture than I would. What I think worst case scenario is if, and it's really a big if to me, if he can even deliver on all of these communistic promises,
Which he won't be able to because it's going to get blocked.
I don't think he will be. I don't think he will be able to either. But let's just say he can. New York would financially collapse. Its local government would financially collapse. As bad as the streets are now,
It's
probably
already
would get
it's
worse.
already a disaster.
So yeah, he would be. There's no doubt he would be an absolute disaster. But they're handing him the election. They're going to hand it to him. Sliwa's not going to drop out. They're not putting a good campaign behind Adams. Except I'm not Mamdani. That's not going to do it. So I'd say right now Mamdani will win by a slim margin. I think a slim margin.
But it's also one of those things too, where it's like, have you ever tried to go grocery shopping living in New York City?
If I go there, it's just to travel, so I don't really. Like I said, you know
So,
more about the culture than me.
When you go grocery shopping here in Austin, it takes you 10 minutes to get to the store?
Yeah, I go to a store that's out in the suburbs.
Okay, it takes 10 minutes to get to the store. Okay, you live in New York. Going grocery shopping is a day-long event. If you don't have a car,
Yeah.
you
Which I guess most don't.
yeah, you're taking like 3 trains.
Well, I would never live in New York City.
No, I wouldn't either.
Mamdani or
Doesn't matter. It
No,
doesn't matter.
yeah.
No, it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, like, here's the thing that everyone's missing, right? You know, you're taking like, there's certain people that have to take like 3 trains and like 2 buses to go to the grocery store, right? And if Mamdani says, "Hey, man, we're going to build a city-run grocery store in your neighborhood. You don't have to travel that much anymore." Like, there is utility. There is actual utility in a place like New York for some of these crazy ideas.
Yeah. The question is, can he pull it off? Probably not, but he can sell it.
He's a very good talker. And what I like about, here's the thing, right? I have a pretty good radar for bad leadership, right?
Do you?
I think I do.
Okay.
I think that Mamdani's not a Kassar. I think that listening to him talk, I think he genuinely wants to actually do right by the people in New York. Just listening to him speak, I think he genuinely is going to try to do his best. Just like Donald Trump is trying to do his best for America, I think Zoran's going to try to do his best for New York. It'll just be under in a different avenue than what Donald Trump is doing.
You know what? I think this is a great point to end on, and it gets back to what I was saying. Because I think the one thing that maybe call it the anti-establishment left, the anti-establishment right, it's the younger generation, right? I think both of us kind of see the same issues. We want to solve the same problems. We just attack that from a different perspective. So, like, for me, I say government is the problem. I say less government is the solution. For the left, they say we need more government. But
And
both of us, I think, are trying to reach
figure it out, yeah.
kind of the same thing. We want better lives. We want the average person to have a better experience, have more access.
And there are no small businesses in New York anymore. They're done. You can't run a small business in New York. It's impossible.
But let me ask you this as we sign off here too, because I would never support Mamdani. It's not my problem. I don't live in New York City.
Me neither, right? Yeah.
But it's kind of like the same way I feel about AOC. Like, I think AOC is a complete lunatic politically. But I actually, part of me kind of wants to see them succeed, only because anything that's going to usher in the new political age, I'm ready. I'm ready. So if younger leftists and communists start getting into power, and the result on the other side of that spectrum is going to be that younger conservatives start getting elected and getting into power, then I think that's a good thing. I think whatever it takes to flush out this rot, whatever it takes to flush out this generation of politics that has not done good for anybody, I think that's a good thing. Now, I don't want leftist communists to run the country.
No, me neither, right?
But I'm saying anything to get it, like it's like a sewage drain, right? It's like a chemical, like you wouldn't drink it, but you pour it down your drain to get the sewage out.
Yes.
So it's like whatever we got to do to get that out. I'm for it. So that's kind of what I see the rise of AOC and a Mamdani representing for the left.
No, I could not agree with you more on that. I think that with people like Mamdani, right? And I think that people
He's got a
like,
cool T-shirt.
He does have a cool T-shirt. I think that the reason he won is because he was selling a bag of goods and selling propositions that a regular New Yorker who doesn't live online could say, okay, this will make my life easier. And conservatives, when they come up with different policy decisions, they have to sell things. They have to sell a platform to make their lives easier. That's why Trump did so well. You think Donald Trump won the election? No, Donald Trump didn't win. Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, and RFK Jr.
It was the coalition, yeah,
won the election. Like I voted for Trump because RFK dropped out and endorsed him. If RFK didn't drop out and endorse him, I would have stayed home and not voted.
And I'd say there's maybe 5% of Trump voters that were the exact same.
Yeah. And so here's and then I got fully and then I went balls to the wall. And you saw with the videos I was making because now you got a guy that's like legitimately doing everything he can in his power to take the chemicals out of our food. He's
doing great work.
Yeah, he's doing really good.
He's
holding
the
vaccine. Yeah, the vaccine manufacturers accountable. When I start my family, my kid's going to be a lot healthier because there's going to be less pressure to put chemicals in their body. So all that stuff is really good. It presents tangible value. Back to Bitcoin. The strategic Bitcoin reserve is going to be really good to help pay off the national debt. If you own Bitcoin, it's going to be really good for regular people like myself to continue being middle class and have this and actually have the American dream. And you actually get to save money the way Grandma told you to save money because of this newer and better technology. You need, if conservatives or Republicans or the MAGA coalition wants to continue winning elections, you have to do things that offer genuine value to people. You have to be like, hey man, we're gonna always protect your digital privacy. Hey, we're gonna make sure that we get chemicals and bad things out of the food. If a guy like Mamdani has a good idea, you say, okay, we like this idea isn't going to work the way you're approaching it, but we're going to make some tweaks to it so that we can actually implement it.
This is why they're going to hand him the election. What ideas does Eric Adams have?
Zero.
Bingo. The only idea he has is I'm not Mamdani.
Yeah.
He's not. So you got to have a better campaign.
No, I agree. But that's what I think. That's where I think we got to be at. And I think with student loans, I think we should forgive student loans, but you can't just blanketly.
No.
Let me give you. You want to hear my solution for forgiving student loans? Look at the roads that we saw. Look at the potholes. Look at how shitty everything is, right? If you're a college kid, $200,000+ in debt, and someone said, "Hey, man, for a year, we're gonna give you an opportunity to work on a construction crew, $6-7 an hour minimum wage pay, to help clean up the roads, help clean up natural disasters, help fix our infrastructure, and in 2 years, your debts are forgiven. We get better infrastructure, we get a better country." We're spending a very large amount of money, and then after that, we get rid of the federal student loan program, so governments can't lend money to these kids anymore, where the cost just continues to skyrocket.
It's a creative idea. The problem is the student loans, most of them are owned to different banks, so I don't know how you would work that deal out. I mean, maybe there would be a creative solution to that, but you can't cancel student loan debt. The banks are already on the verge of collapse.
You should at least be able to discharge it in bankruptcy court. And if the banks are on the verge of collapse, well, there's something that fixes it. And we already know what it is.
Well, you can't you? I mean, you lose your credit. But
no, you actually cannot.
You can't?
You're not allowed to.
Even if you go bankrupt?
Not allowed to.
Yeah, well, I guess it's a debt contract.
Yeah, so, I'm only bringing this up because maybe there's a small chance that somebody close to President Trump, or his team is.
But here's the thing too with the student loans,
right?
They make it so easy. They don't crush you with it. You can pay like 1% monthly. So it's like they do as much as they can to make it manageable.
But then the amount that you owe winds up being more than what you
that's true.
signed up for, which is.
But you signed up for it. What are you going to do?
But you didn't know when you were brainwashed.
Doesn't matter.
And you know what?
Doesn't matter.
A lot of these leftists, they're openly saying like, "Oh, an 18-year-old kid can't consent to student loans, but a 5-year-old kid can get his balls chopped off." So like, it's hard to have sympathy with those people. But
it's true. But yeah, it is what it is.
This is where we're at. And
you signed your name.
There's $32 billion or something like that of unpaid student loan debt.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
And credit card debt and everything else.
There's a lot of people with a lot of these problems, and if these problems don't get fixed, and if people don't have a sense of reinvigoration to the American dream, you are going to get the communist revolution that none of us want.
So you cut the taxes. That's all you got to do.
I'm not arguing with that.
I
think taxes are a fucking scam, right? Like, I agree with you. I'm just saying that if conservatives were serious about winning, these are the conversations that they would have. They wouldn't be just repeating the same Fox News talking points.
Agreed.
Owen, how do we get a hold of you?
You can find me on X at Owen Shroyer 1776, or watch my show, owenshroyer.show, or rumble.com/Owen.
Dude, thank you so much. This is so much fun.
Or flying through Austin on a pink pedicab.
On a pink pony pedicab. We're secure with our sexuality where we can wear pink and rock the pink tricycle.